I'm going to be paying a lot more attention in my backyard from now on. I had no idea all that was going on. Okay, our next writer, his name is Michael Foster. Michael is a futurist, armchair psychologist, web designer, photographer, game designer, a cinema fanatic, and a visual designer. His varied career in digital and traditional media make him a prime candidate to understand what it means to live in the age of reinvention. He began his careers in multimedia working in television, where he produced and directed 13 television programs when he was 20 years old, including Barcelona, a pilot episode requested by DreamWorks XKG. Michael is a founder and co-owner of Boo Jazz Studios and is working on a nonfiction project with his partner, Russell C. Smith. Michael, come on up.
Now I got to live up to that bio. That's just terrible. Puts the pressure on. How y'all doing tonight?
Great.
You can take my seat, man. Seriously, just go ahead. Just don't knock over my wine. I'm going to need that in 10 minutes, probably. So, you know, Ann and Kevin, we were talking about like, what am I going to talk about? Because I do write, but I'm more of a nonfiction type of person. And so we said, well, what if we talk about like the future of publishing? And it was like, okay, that's cool. So I started researching it, and you know, when you look up like the future of publishing, what you do is you get like 12 Google pages, all about self-publishing. Now, what I understand about self-publishing is it's what your publisher or agent tells you when they think your book is crappy, and they say they want you to feel empowered, and they're like, well, you can self-publish your book if you like to. Oh, really? How's that go? Well, if you don't need food or shelter for a year, if your body does not require these things, you can have time to write your book. Oh, really? But I'm hungry. So then you gotta figure that out. But it's interesting because what's happened with the market now is that you have these, kind of superstar authors, and then you have really wonderful self-published books that do become officially published books. Because people do find the way to get the time and resources to do that. And then you get kind of a lot of bad books that, that basically, I'm going to write a book today, and here we go. So I decided, we're going to change this up a little bit, and we'll just talk about the future in general, because it's really very fascinating. It's something I've become quite versed in. Getting back a couple of years ago, my friend Russell C. Smith, who is a fiction writer, came up with the idea hey, Mike, you want to write a nonfiction book? And me being a person who never really says no to anything, it was like, oh, sure, why not? Let's do that. What's it going to be about? And since I study a lot of tech and I work in that kind of field, I said, well, let's write about the Age of Reinvention. And we got an email from Arianna Huffington, and so we actually blog about it for the Huffington Post, and I've done so for the last couple of years, which has been really thrilling. And what we found is that basically our future is moving so quickly that we find we are forced to reinvent ourselves and understand the world very differently in a much quicker pace than we used to. I actually work in web design, and I found just in my own career, you have this, I learned how to build websites in 1998, 1999. That was really awesome. And in 2003, I had to learn how to build them again because everything changed. And then in 2007, I had to learn to build them again because everything changed. And right now, I'm learning how to build them again because everything has changed. And the thing is, it's not as easy as okay, well, I'll just see what everyone else is doing. I'll do it that way. Because if you pick the wrong thing, you're going to be a barista at Starbucks because there's no jobs for you. And I started to realize that it wasn't just my industry, but every industry is becoming this way. And from a cognitive perspective, as we get older, it becomes harder and harder for us to shift our thoughts and our ideas and our perspectives. And we almost have to retrain ourselves on how to do that. And so I started writing about reinvention because tech was moving so fast. And just to give a kind of an armchair example of that, the computing power of this cell phone that we all have in our pockets would probably be this building in the 1970s. And in 30 years from now, this computing power will fit in a blood cell. So that's how fast it's going. And everyone is now creeped out. But we're also really bad at predicting the future. And the future is a really interesting thing. Now, if any of you remember Back to the Future, which I'm sure you all do, but there was that sequel, there was Back to the Future 2, and he goes to 2015, and 2015 is filled with flying cars and hoverboards, and I'm really disappointed we don't have hoverboards yet, and all colorful people and TV screens of Ronald Reagan taking your order. And I think they should reshoot it. They should actually reshoot Back to the Future 2, just that segment, for what 2015 really is like. He comes out, he's like, the future. And then there'd just be like a Fuddruckers there. And everyone's doing this, And, like, Doc, what's going on? Everyone's on, they're just holding these things and just staring at them. Well, Marty, they invented the iPhone back in like 2007, and that's what kids do now. There's Griff, stop Griff. Because obviously Biff would have a grandson named Griff. And Griff would be like, no, butthead, I'm on my iPhone. As he cyberbullies. Butthead. Worst movie ever. But yeah, as it turns, and it's funny too, because if you actually watch the commentary from like 1989, you get like Robert Zemeckis, like, we had all these guys. All these guys were thinking about what the future was going to be. And then now you see the commentary and they're all like, we were just making it up, we didn't know. I didn't need another drink. So in terms of topics, I find that the future is really fascinating. And it's already starting to happen. I mean, we see it in young adult novels. Anybody who's going to be seeing Hunger Games 2 this weekend. Obviously in the O's, we kind of had this sort of vampire phase, which I think when we look back on it from a long perspective, it was our way of sort of dealing with the fact that, how to deal with the monster inside of us. We're having this thing now where we live in an age of such openness that we're having to sort of accept certain things about who we are as people. And I think that was kind of the fascination with vampires. And now, of course, we're into post-apocalyptic worlds where young women surrounded by really wimpy guys, like she has to save the world because everything is all corrupt. I mean, yeah, it's and you're all like, hey, it's true. You've ever read Hunger Games, it's really good, actually. Katniss is like, oh, Peeta's really strong. He can throw flour, or he can throw lots of flour. And he's just like, no, the bags of flour. $1 billion franchise. But anyway, but why is it important to write about the future? Because it's happening so fast that we need to sort of find our moral center again. And we're going to have to try to anticipate things, and we don't even know what those things are going to be. We have a lot of ethical dilemmas that are going to hit us so quickly that unless we start asking the questions now and trying to figure out the possibilities now, that, well, we're going to find ourselves very lost. And I think for fiction, and I think for just people in general and ideas, people are going to kind of want to be able to anticipate what's going to happen. One of my favorite books, actually, I'll pull it out. I'm going to do a plug for a good friend of mine. His name is Gary Lemons. He actually wrote a poetry book called Snake. And basically what Snake is, it's a post-apocalyptic collection of poetry about this sort of creature that's either a snake or some sort of, basically whatever's left of the internet kind of floating around, trying to figure out exactly what our whole civilization was all about. And it's really fascinating. I highly suggest you pick it up. So it doesn't just have to be about, awesome girls like trying to, take down corporations or whatever. It could actually be something much more cerebral, which is also very exciting. But to give you an example like how things move so fast, we think about like television. We had television in the 50s when Marty was trying to keep his mom away from him. I mean, she was a young Leigh Thompson, I understand. But, we get to like that, and then like in the 70s we started really questioning it. If anyone remembers the movie Network, I see a lot of blank faces with the kids in the audience. I'm sorry, we will get to you later. We did mention Hunger Games, so it's okay. But it wasn't until the 70s we started actually questioning this technology that we've let into our homes. I mean, we were kind of questioning in the 60s and 70s, but really it was like, wait a minute, we've had television for 20 years. And we probably should have been questioning it much earlier. As I remember in the 50s, when I was a kid, I was watching a Jack Benny special that they had aired. And it was basically, they cut to a commercial. And as we all know, like the commercials in those days were cigarette sponsors. So they get to this guy, he's like, hey, we're going to our sponsor. And some guy like smoking Lucky Strikes. He's like, hey guys, have some Lucky Strike cigarettes. We have this new thing. It's called a cellophane wrapper. It's this new technology. It keeps them fresher, longer, faster. And then they cut to how they test the cellophane wrapper. And this is Mrs. YY Flirch of Michigan, Michigan. And she tests the wrapper over a live bowl of mercury. And there she is dipping the package in mercury, like, having a good time with it, I guess. And so that's why I think we really need to question the technology before we just let it out into the open. Because, because now we live in a world where, and if you guys have never seen this PBS special, you can actually stream this kind of stuff. That's what I love about the future now. We can just watch anything instantaneously. There's a wonderful thing called Digital Nation, and it was actually inspired because one of the producers of the show was cooking dinner, and she saw her husband on a laptop, her oldest son on the laptop and 2 kids on an iPhone, and realized this just sort of happened. We didn't really anticipate this, and here it is. And it was kind of creepy, and it's a wonderful special, so I highly suggest you guys all check it out. In terms of trends, I think that we're living in a world that's happening so fast that pop culture is becoming a visual language of itself. I actually did a lecture over at Chicago's Comic-Con about that, where we're basically saying, and here's a perfect example, how many of you guys use movie quotes as like just in your dialogue every day? How many of you guys just you quote, yeah, you guys all do it, you know? And it's funny because when you think about it, it's sort of our way of kind of saying things without saying something. And you know, if we get some weird guy like staring at us, we'll kind of quote, like, you know, with my wife, and like we'll quote the Christmas story where he's like, "I like Santa," and it's kind of our way of saying, "Oh yeah, that guy is kind of creeping us out over there." And it makes sense that our language would actually naturally soften, because in 30 years, when the average person will have the technology to make a weapon of mass destruction in their basement, we'll be better off probably being a little nicer to each other. Because road rage is going to really stink. I'm sorry, kids. You just be nice to each other. That's the rule. But really, what is the future of the book? And it's funny because with everything I was researching about, everyone says, "Oh, the book is done, the novel's done." They've been saying this for years. "Oh, no one's going to read it anymore." But you know, when I read The Hunger Games a year ago, it was 2 years ago actually, when I first read it, and I actually read it on my iPhone because I wanted to have that experience. And by the way, it's very addicting to write. Like when you're reading a thriller on your phone, you're just like flipping through the pages and you're just sweating. The thing about a book or a poem or something that's written is that it is such a personal experience that a movie or a video game, it's just not going to have that. And it really hits you right here. It can move you in ways that a big screen production cannot. Now, I really liked the Hunger Games movie, and I'm sure the second one's going to be awesome, but that book, I mean, I got really nervous reading that thing. And so my advice to people is what to write about. We need to write about the future. We need to write about what's going to be happening, and we need to get inventive and more creative. And I think that by doing that, all the problems of how do I find a publisher, how do I get attention, you'll find that you won't have to worry about it, because people are going to be really interested in what you have to say. So I'm out of time. All right, thank you guys so much.